This is my new favorite Death Battle episode, ever. Like, no ifs or buts about it. There's just too much for me to praise for that to not be the case. Bars? Question mark. And I think the best way to explain why is to kickstart this review right away. Sorry if I sound sick, by the way, I caught a bit of a cold lately. Oko Krypton here, you know the drill, like and subscribe, let's get it, let it ride. So I think it's safe to compare Cell's breakdown to Maito's, and hear me out on why. They're both probably the best possible breakdowns that villains with arguably limited material and frankly nuance could ask for, and are paired right next to a breakdown that's straight up amazing, so I think the comparison makes sense. Not that this one lacks qualities, however. The overwhelming tone for the introduction of Perfect Cell matching the source material, the way we slowly find out more about his intelligence and abilities, the writing behind Perpetual Shonen Motion Machine, which just sounds way too good of a word combination for this to be this first instance, and the music taking a more classical, aristocratic approach when we get to Perfect Cell, befitting of his more elegant persona, while Mr. Fish Lips gets absolutely nothing, as it should. Also, I really dig how Perfect and Neo are the versions represented the most in this episode, like in the animation and thumbnail in general. I don't know, they just feel like the most elegant and complete versions of them, so it just feels right, you know? And the thumbnail contrasting them against the silver white, just chef kiss. Other small but notable highlights include fun edits like Cell cackling about his solar system scaling being actually supported by outside sources, the delivery from Boomstick, the martial arts trumpets we hear as we get into Cell game stuff, and it's a pretty cool idea to end analysis on a bookends type of way, since Cell's story is pretty much over now. But holy mother of Amazo and Mahoraga combined, Batman, Metal's breakdown is something else. I love how they go from pretty straightforward rundown of what you expect a bionic Sonic to be like, the standard robot power set and all, but the more the rundown goes on, the more of Metal's own individual identity creeps in, and it's done wonderfully. Whether it's comedic stuff like this, his dislikes being Sonic, and his likes being destroying Sonic, this edit of his literally fiery hatred and that glare at a laughing Sonic, or the amount of visual focus the Metal Virus scene gets. They truly did it justice. Quite the detective noir music they played during this part too, which works really well, strangely enough. They went over Metal's, for lack of a better term, jobber status in a rather clever way, basically going over the very correct assessment that the only ways Metal is truly ever defeated in his own verse is against abstract concepts he can't fully copy, like, you know, the power of friendship and plot armor, because otherwise he's just that bastard. And since Cell lacks the power of friendship or plot armor, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. I love the variety of background music here in general. You got Sonic-coded funky video game music, mad scientist music, rock and roll in the background, then as soon as Metal Overload gets involved, the music itself takes a dramatic orchestral swing as if reacting in pure shock, which subtly plants a seed for how much the time stop power is gonna play a role in the animation. But nothing, and I mean nothing, beats the eerie-ass way they choose to wrap it all up. They could have ended it at Metal returning, being Eggman's lapdog again, you know, status quo and all, and everything, but no, they go beyond. And with a clever combination of Sonic racing dialogue, headcanon, visuals, music, and writing, we get one of the coldest endings to a breakdown in Death Battle history. Granted, we read great endings in an independent era before, ask Shigaraki, Bardock, Kyle or Simon, but it's always nice to see regardless. You know what else is really nice to see? Okay, so according to researchers in their self-admitted headcanon, this fight takes place in the same universe as Bowser vs Eggman. The Eggman fleet is being led by Metal posing as Eggman, and he is searching for the time stones to undo the death of his master. You might rightfully point out the old, you know, Metal being dead thing, but let's be real, if there's a character who has backup bodies lying somewhere else, it's probably Metal Sonic. Or Ultron, really. This doesn't particularly affect the fight animation, besides the fact that Metal's entrance goes from Robotnik sending his strongest fighter the instant Cell demands it, which is pretty cool and makes the end result of it even cooler, to Metal just showing up to respond to a threat to his fleet, which, I mean, works too. It's not like these two need particularly complex motivations to fight each other. I still think the setup for fan battles, Metal Sonic vs Cell, was slightly funnier because it included this bit right here.
The military's tried this. Do Do you really think this army of toys can best me? No! I take it back, the military has not tried that yet.
Devil Artemis is great at playing a non-comedic Cell, but it does an amazing Metal. I know, filters and such, but I keep having to remind myself that these two were two different people in two different recording booths, or whatever that Battle puts voice actors in. I guess it must be the Fight Club, because Cell's first offensive action in this fight is a straight up discombobulate. You might roast Cell for trying to pull a Captain America and choke a robot, but hey, because of Abbott plus Cell was perfectly reasonable to think Metal's cranial processing unit drove his body like a brain would drive ahead. On the topic of thinking, man, this fight was written to be one of the best balanced ones in Death Battle history, holy shit. Each combatant gets a moment to shine, aura farm, and dominate the other in some fashion, with neither truly fully stealing the spotlight from the other. It's amazing, and there is semi-perfect coherence with Death Battle's chosen interpretation of stats. Cell is shown to be faster, but Metal is the one whose blows actually cause any damage to the opponent, instead of just briefly messing him up or just moving him around. Cell really said, "Speed please!" And this contrast beautifully blends together with Cell's regeneration. You kinda start to see why Brick vs Blob is such a popular Death Battle subgenre/dynamic. You recognize this screenshot if you watched my previous video. On that topic, I think this fight and Shigahito both do something very similar. Interestingly enough, they both provide reasons for why the upcoming Stomp victim dominates a good portion of the fight. Shigaraki had superior maneuvering abilities, but was in a confined space against a pretty unpredictable opponent. Metal is used to being equal in speed only to Sonic, and is now met with a new foe faster than him at base form and got superior martial arts knowledge. This resulted in new exciting fight dynamics for both fights, and to the surprise of no one, they're both peak. My only gripe when it comes to balancing out the animation with the power scaling aspect is the black shield getting shattered so easily by a special beam cannon. Now granted, I am ignorant on what the latter should be able to do, I only know it's Piccolo's thing, but I do remember from my research that it should be indestructible. It's a nitpick honestly, especially compared to the godlike characterization given to both. Cell is flowery and eloquent, he needs you to know how many techniques he mastered, taking you to perfect university. But Metal is precise, he's a machine. He speaks with purpose. He matches Cell's shit talk with half the dialogue. He scans data and chooses what to show you. Chooses which copied power better suits the situation. Yet he still throws in some one-liners here and there. He is Sonic's copy after all. The characterization is just amazing. I wish Heavy Death Battle has something like this. This might sound like a weirdly specific thing for me to praise, but I love how much the planes in the background just keep flying unbothered by this fight. Like, these two are having a clash of DBZ proportions and the Eggman fleet just keeps floating on. It makes it feel as if this fight, epic as it can get, it's smaller than the things the Eggman fleet is already used to. It's a small but notable detail, but it makes the Eggman Empire feel like, an empire. A lot of y'all got mad at me on Twitter for calling this an abridged reference, but basically I remember that Torjita gave a lot of abridged lines to the latter, and the whole "do X like you feel any fear" was in there too, so I thought it came from abridged as well, my bad. Anywho, it's still a one-on-one reference to something Vegeta said in canon, which is my least favorite kind of Death Battle quote usage. Luckily, Metal Sonic replies with my favorite kind of Death Battle quote usage.
Ever experience fear?
Not anymore!
Rephrasing/recontextualization. Metal isn't just doing some great line delivery here, but specifically referring to a quote from Sonic Heroes, "See as I am, no longer afraid of anything," something he said as Metal Overlord, which in turn is a reference to all things the Bible, John 10:34. And I swear, artificial characters going biblical one way or the other will never not go hard. I don't make the rules. Now, Metal's Overlord treatment in this animation is very interesting. At first you might doubt Cell's chances with him going so well at the start, but then Metal bursts out his super transformation first, before Super Perfect Cell, and you kinda second guess yourself. But what actually happened here is that Death Battle writing team doing a great job making you quote unquote forget about Chaos Emeralds being Metal's quote big thing, which the animation handles even better by having Super Perfect Cell still not being enough to match Super Neo Metal. I think it's safe to say that the whole transform first, die first rule in that battle is slowly dying out, which makes the pacing for future episodes pretty exciting. But Hawk, I hear you say, they said Super Neo and Metal Overload are the forms that will give Cell trouble, so why is the latter thrown and dispatched off so quickly? I think that's a fair criticism to make about the animation. Then again, I wouldn't be able to tell you where else to place it, and I hate to complain without having a solution in mind, so there's that. But to play Devil Artemis Advocate, it is still shown to smack Cell around and be more powerful overall, with Cell needing to acquire on his superior speed and technically using Eggman Empire technology to get out of this one, rather than his own firepower. So you could argue that we're just at the right limit in terms of that battle power scaling accuracy versus the animated fight. Also, thank you all for the correction, but this is not that egg, but this little big planet. And look, I saw a silver planetoid with a circle belonging to the Eggman fleet. I wasn't the only one to make that comparison. Something I didn't know, however, being relatively new to the fandom, is that this planetoid is nothing less than the place Metal Sonic debuted in. And that's really cool. Cell basically smacked Metal with some memories. Personally, I'm also choosing to view this moment as Cell pulling a Freezatron, since we are talking about someone with Frieza cells telekinetically pushing a robot planet against their opponent. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think this was a reference. Also, teleporting something so it can explode somewhere else may be a reference to Cell's own demise, making this some sweet irony like, haha, this is what they did to me once. I have no idea what voice was that, but it wasn't any version of Cell. Who knows what this version of Cell has gone to already? I mean, it should be the entirety of DBZ, right? Maybe he got resurrected like Frieza. Resurrection C.
Fool, you're dealing with the ultimate life form.
I already possess his data. Observe. Chaos! Control.
I love everything about this bit. I love how Metal's response could be anywhere between glazing Shadow, someone he canonically respects apparently, to literally having Shadow saved in his database as ultimate life form from just how much the edgy Hedgehog refers to himself as that. As such, you never truly know what goes inside that noggin. Either way, this is Metal basically telling Cell, you are not the ultimate life form, you're not even good enough to be his fake. On the other hand, Sonic 3 callback may feel oddly placed, but low-key, not really. I mean, both scenes are still about a quote ultimate life form against a quote Sonic, so it still stands. And while I love that Cells is generally savvy enough to try and stop the announced attack while it's being said, bro is not Heron Jäger, the animation deciding to stay accurate to Dead Bell's interpretations of stats means that Cells blows can only move Metal around, doing literally 0 damage. It's Naoya vs Maki all over again.
I know. Now I know everything about you, insect.
This might sound weird, but I gotta go over one of Dead Battle's best written subplots, let's call them, for lack of a better term. First, Metal grabs Cell's arm during a time stop, now knowing full well it can regenerate and testing things out, letting Cell know that he knows. Then he proceeds to taunt Cell even more with the same gesture he did in canon while explaining his power to regenerate for a single core, basically non-verbally telling Cell, I know what you cannot heal from, I know what it takes to kill you, I will do it. A point that he once again non-verbally reiterates by the very end, in which he uses Silver's psychokinesis to keep Cell's nucleus at bay, then crush it, as efficiently as a machine can be. Foreshadowing, demonstration, payoff. There are movies that do 3-act structures worse than this 4-minute fight animation do, by the way. And I love how Cell's mood completely changes as soon as he gets damaged. Gone is that Elegance smugness, and rage takes over, immediately assuming Metal was going for the kill and is not playing with his food. Who's gonna tell him? Something about this fight animation that I think particularly captured the hearts of both mainstream fans and power scalers alike is how much it taps into why we love crossovers so much. Like that vibe you get when upgrade fused with Generator Rex, or when the Winchester brothers parked right next to the Mystery Machine. You know, that type of feeling. A feeling that this fight captures perfectly, no pun intended, with this scene right here of Metal performing the Tri-Beam. On the fan service type side of things, it's a memory that really wounds Cell's ego, whether we are talking about his abridged or canon self. It's an iconic scene for fans. It taps into the surreal awesomeness of a Sonic character using classic DBZ moves like this, or the Kamehameha and Death Beam later. On the characterization side of things, Metal specifically picking this move means that he looked deep into Cell's memories after scanning him, found out about the one opponent that threatened his existence that he didn't get to defeat or punish, since Tien timed out of his own accord after using the Tri-Beam, and decided, you know what, that sounds mentally humiliating enough, let's use that, all in a matter of seconds. This is gonna be one of the best psychological demonstrations of intelligence I've ever seen in a death metal animation, and it clashes perfectly against Cell's intelligence being more on the martial arts side of things. You can't judo throw psychological attacks, my guy. And it gets even better when you remember that this move drains the user's stamina. So Metal is using the limitless energy provided by the emeralds to its fullest. It just peak no matter how you look at it. And the exact same could be said about Metal copying Cell's head tap gesture. Fanservicely speaking, it's a great callback to him copying Sonic's nose wipe. Characterizationally speaking, it's him telling Cell that he knows about what it takes to kill him, meaning that everything from this point on towards the end is a cat playing with his food, and Cell cannot stand it. It's glorious, just glorious. There are a lot of, quote, it would be amazing if they did that isms when it comes to death battle animations, and those that stand out the most to me are the ones that, obviously due to a lucky combination of creativity, time, and resources aligning, managed to actually pull them off. And I brought up the Cell Juniors in my reaction video, something that would be really cool to see in the fight, but I wasn't holding my breath about it because, you know, it would require a whole new model and colors and choreography and such, and then Cell whips out all of them in pure allow me to empreg in the middle of the fight fashion. I didn't even have time to celebrate that because Metal replicates that immediately. I love how many things I had to say about this segment. Firstly, it's a double Sonic reference, as it could be a nod to either the Brotherhood of Metallics from the comics, or the small army of metals that ambush movie Sonic at the end of movie 3, as they do seem more silvery than usual base metal. Might just be me though. On my side of recognizable references, however, the way he instantly materialized them gives me major Infinity Ultron vibes. Another instance of an evolved robot using reality warping gems to create new minions out of nowhere. I mean, in my limited scope of Sonic knowledge, Chaos Emeralds do allow you to create matter just fine, so, you know, there's that. I love how Metal went from being outnumbered to matching the outnumbering. Really makes him feel like an algorithm that learns and adapts. Something real-life algorithms could learn from. Also, this bit of the clones engaging in a world-spreading battle is a small but notable reminder of how lucky this version of Earth is for surviving basically unscathed after these two fought. And you thought it was ridiculous when the planet didn't explode into Vegeta. Seriously though, I do really like it when they show off power in subtle ways like this. Think of the moon scene in Adam Apocalypse. And you might say something about him dispatching of them just as quickly, but number one, firing a laser that's gonna hit your own troops is nothing new for the Eggman family. And number two, they aren't really worth much. I mean, they are AI generated. After getting some atrocious PTSD from getting Shikiko horned all the way back into the Cell Games arena twice, Super Perfect Cell bursts into the scene as you get, honestly fuck it, one of the best endings in Death Battle history, okay? From just how much is a love letter towards all things Dragon Ball, in a better way than Vegeta vs Gogeta. I know it's not a hard bar to surpass. First, the sheer poetry of Cell's final fight, once again being a Kamehameha clash, which he loses not necessarily due to inferior firepower, I mean, he would, but not here, not in this animation, but by being blindsided. Both times against someone he egged on for a challenge, with awful results. The whole framing of this energy clash mirrors the one performed by Goku against Vegeta in the Saiyan saga, with Cell being a stand-in for Goku in terms of positioning, which I really like. The Greatest Warrior line is an all-timer death battle line that I'm honestly shocked is not from canon. It's a beautiful contrast to the way Metal glazed his unwilling power donors. One is boasting, the other is matter of fact. Also, was it meant to be a play on I am all of me? Cell, you really want to be a shadow, don't you? I've seen some suggest the theory that Metal moved out of the way of the Kamehameha to bait Cell into a false sense of security, as it would make no sense for him to actually lose the power struggle here. Now, you do see the emeralds floating behind him and him regenerating his arm seconds before this. So my theory is the following. Metal timed out of his Super Neo form, but then proceeded to super perfect Zenkai boost his way back into it off screen thanks to Cell's generous donation, which Metal lampshades here.
If you are all of them, then so am I.
Props to Metal for being polite enough to time his chaos control in a way that results in a sentence that still makes sense. Metal proceeds to use Frieza's death beam to sneak attack Cell to the heart, exactly what it did to Trunks, which that goes so hard honestly. It's even more mind games from Metal's perspective. I've seen some argue that Metal used instant transmission here, which I mean perfectly likely and probably a great way to make up for Cell's speed advantage. But this move right here, I've seen many describe it as anywhere between Vegeta's Genesis Break and one-arm Kamehameha like Gohan, or either of the above mixed in with a Chaos Blast from Shadow. I personally think it being a combination is the coolest outcome. On the topic of Dragon Ball X Sonic crossovers, Metal using Silver Psychokinesis to hold cells together is not only a neat reference to Metal doing the exact same with a Metal Virus, but also marks the second time on that battle where Silver kills a Vegeta offspring, which is just kind of funny. When it comes to the post-analysis, do I think Cell's winning at speed is a pity point? Yes and no. On one end, I think it's crazy that battle still doesn't buy immeasurable speed Sonic after all the research I did for this matchup, but given the animation, it's possible for me to think that they agree about Super Neo Metal Sonic reaching that level at least. But maybe they brought this up in a black box, I don't know. On the other end, I cannot lie about how really funny it is for Dragon Ball's Imperfect Copy to lose the sheer powerhouse category, while Sonic's Imperfect Copy loses the speed category. I don't know, it feels as if they're trying to keep up the whole motif of Zero and Eggman not being able to fully copy the real deal of the arch enemy they're trying to copy, and it just thematically works for me this one time. I don't know, just, themes and such. I really fucking hate that meme, by the way, but I go over the theme so much I just felt like bringing it up. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. I was kinda worried when I found out the title track for this fight was gonna be a pun. I took it as a sign of that battle not taking this matchup seriously and going for a dumb fun route. I was so wrong and I couldn't think of a battle title for this fight now. Firstly, Metal as Hell is indeed a great way to describe the reputation of Cell and Metal and the design of the latter, as the breakdown says. The Cell theme is recognizable like few in anime history are, I'm pretty sure, but the dramatic alarm sound that blares when Metal is on screen, foreshadowing the hell Cell is gonna be put through, is just But before that, the music does as much of a great job as the animation, selling Cell as a legitimate threat. I don't have the Sonic knowledge to immediately pinpoint which pieces of Sonic music inspired this track the most. I can only look it up on a wiki, but I most definitely recognized some live and learn here and there thanks to Sonic 3, and some familiar riffs on retro rivals. There's this chiptune-esque part which definitely sounds video gamey, and it turns out it's the part inspired from Metal's debut game, CD, but nothing beats how the track transitions from techno to rock and roll as soon as Metal turns the tide against the android. You now get into the second interpretation of the quote as Cell part. When Metal bioscans the entirety of Cell's being, it now gets the same abilities as Cell. His rock motif now plays the same motif as Cell's. brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. Metal went so hard in the copy department, he copied Cell's theme song blow for blow, bar for bar. Just absolutely brilliant. And apparently the universe decided that this was gonna be my first time ever listening to what I'm made of in any form, which unfortunately resulted in me not picking it up at first when it played during Metal's victory, but I now have it saved on my phone. What I'm sure you haven't picked up, however, person at home, probably at least, is the very music during a Kamehameha alongside the two androids. Listen to it. What else to call this track except perfect? I think something happened in the cosmos to intertwine me with this matchup, because I instantly got the narrative theme for this matchup before the episode even dropped. Superiority complex versus inferiority complex. Cell genuinely sees himself as an apex, flawless, immaculate, pristine, like marble, ultimate, and whatever synonymous of perfect your native language provides, person at home. Metal, however, he only puts on the facade of superiority, because deep down he is terribly messed up by the inner knowledge of not being the real Sonic, something he only shows traces of being upset about at the very end when he kills Cell for calling him just a machine. It must suck for Cell to be the less nuanced of the two, narratively and power scalingly speaking. Because if you think about it, most Sonic characters are born with their powers already, and that is the type of fighter Metal was built to match. So by literally being programmed with all the genetic data of the Z-Warrior's powers, abilities and techniques, plus the knowledge and experience on how to best use them, all up for grabs for Metal to replicate, I honestly don't think he could have picked a worse opponent for the green android to go up against. So as the man himself said, either you are perfect or you get perfected.